Hello, everyone. Welcome to Get Fit, Stay Fit, part of our virtual Scott Self-Care series. I'm Jen Armstrong, the Director of Alumni Engagement. I'm here with Charlie Goehl, class of 1973. He's going to lead our presentation today. We have about 20 people present right now, and we're so happy to see so many of you from around the country to join us here in Monmouth on a beautiful day. Before we begin, I just want to cover a few housekeeping items. Participants, you're on mute and your cameras are off. For the best viewing experience, please ensure that you're on speaker mode, which can be selected in the upper right corner of your screen if you hover over it. It looks like a little Rubik's Cube, so you can choose that. Today, Charlie's going to speak for about 15 to 20 minutes, and then we'll open the floor for questions. Enter your questions in the chat box, and then I'll read them to Charlie. So we've been having a lot of fun planning these virtual events. So I just want to remind you, after this, you'll get a survey, and we love to hear ideas from you. We take those ideas and put them out to our alumni for virtual events. So please take some time to fill out the survey. And we are so thankful that Charlie's volunteered to lead us through today's presentation. After graduating from Monmouth College in 1973, he went on to receive his master's from University of Illinois. He's the author of several published articles on teaching and coaching. Professor Goehl has given numerous presentations related to best practices in teaching and coaching at local, state, national, and international conferences. He's received funding from several agencies to support his research and his teaching interests. Professor Goehl's teaching focuses on sports skill development and health promotion, including lifetime sports, team sports, and lifestyles for health and wellness. Thank you, Charlie. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I've done a number of presentations, but this is the first one that I'm doing on Zoom, I guess it is. So it's a little bit unnerving to look at the screen and see yourself. I saw the list of people that are the potential people that were going to attend, and it was good to see some names that I've seen before, and it always brings back great memories to think about Monmouth. We had a cluster reunion, I think it was 2 years ago, or maybe it was 3 years ago, I can't remember, and they asked me to give a presentation similar to this, and it was live, and we had quite a few people, maybe 35, 40 people that showed up for it. And it's a little easier, I think, when I'm sitting there talking with people, but these are strange times, we all know that, and we got to make good with what we have. So I'll be happy to answer anybody's questions about particulars that you might have. What I want to do is just start off talking a little bit about some of the kinds of things that I teach, I guess, in the course that I do called Lifestyles for Health and Wellness. So I've taught this class every semester. I do it during our January term also. It's a 2-hour class, a 7-week class typically. And one of the things that I try to focus on is to have our students come up with what we call a fitness portfolio. So I'll explain what they do for the fitness portfolio, and then I want to kind of go into detail, not tremendous detail, but detail of what it would be like to try to put together a fitness program, some of the principles that you should consider, some things that you have a lot of options, and so options that you would enjoy, that you're going to keep doing this. And remember that when it comes to fitness, that it's obviously a lifelong endeavor. You're going to be changing your program constantly. That's what I tell my students is, you're going to come up with a plan for 7 weeks, but you're going to be coming up with plans for your fitness for the rest of your life. The first chapter that we focus on, though, is a little bit about wellness. So I just want to focus on wellness with COVID going on right now, and all the difficulties that it's bringing to us. Wellness really is good health and optimal well-being. So it's kind of above and beyond whether you're injured or sick or whatever. But I just read the paper a little bit ago and said that we just crossed over 200,000 deaths now from COVID, and the implications that it's having on everybody's life. The Tribune just had an article talking about DuPage County, where I live, west of Chicago, and how suicide rates are up by 25%, and drug overdoses are up compared to last year, and most of that has happened since March. So I know a lot of us are becoming isolated. We're sometimes quarantining in our own homes. We've lost our jobs. All these kinds of things have happened to us. So I would just encourage you to stay positive, do whatever you can to get yourself motivated to get through life, I guess, and take care of others. So I just want to start by saying that. So the fitness portfolio is a project that our students do, and the first part of it is they're going to write an introduction to me, and that just kind of explains, their fitness habits. Sometimes I say past to present, but I'm more concerned about the kinds of things they're doing right now. Obviously, a number of my students are athletes, so they're going to be fit because of the training that they do for their sport. In order to get fit, then you have to address the 5 health-related components of fitness. And those are cardio, respiratory endurance, muscular strength, muscular endurance, flexibility, and body composition. So those are the areas that I'm asking them to address, and those would be the areas that all of us will address and would address in order to become fit. I have them do pre-tests in every one of those. So for cardio, they do a 1.5 mile run. They keep track of how fast they can do it. Then they go through a formula based on their weight and their heart rate and do what's called a VO2 max, the maximum amount of oxygen that they can take in. And that gives them some kind of sense of where they're at right now and helps them set a goal. For the flexibility test, we do a sit and reach test, kind of a generic test where they sit with their feet flat and bend over and push an instrument as far as they can. And it, again, gives them a sense of how flexible their upper body, lower body, hamstrings, glutes are. And again, they set a goal based on that. For muscular strength, I really don't ask them to do anything because the definition of strength is how much you can do one time. So it's generally measured in like a 1 rep max for bench press for upper body and squat for lower body. And that isn't really that necessary for the general student. Again, athletes, maybe their coach wants them to, be strong and they might measure that. So we focus on muscular endurance instead. And a muscular endurance test that they do is how many push-ups can they do. And if it's ladies, they can do the modified push-ups if they can't do very many regular push-ups. And then the last one is the body composition. We have what we call a bioelectrical impedance analysis. It's kind of a handheld device where they hold it out, they type in their height, their weight, their age, and their gender, and then it's plus or minus 4%, but in 7 seconds it'll tell them their percentage of body fat. So when they get the results of all those, and we do those basically the first day, they're going to set goals for 7 weeks from now. And then most importantly, they're going to come up with a plan to achieve those. And I want them to come up with a weekly plan because I'm going to talk a little bit here about some of the principles of fitness, and we go over that with them as the class goes through its course. But essentially, what are you doing every day? So, what are you doing on Monday? Are you stretching on Monday? Are you doing your cardio on Monday? Are you doing strength training? Those are all essential things that you have to do to address these health-related components of fitness. And if they want to focus on diet, they can do that. I don't really ask that as an absolute requirement. I at times have assignments where I have them keep track of their nutrition for 3 or 4 days and analyze that, because certainly diet is a big part of the body composition part. So after they have their pre-test results, and they set their goals and they come up with their plan, then simply following your plan. So I have them document that. I tell them to keep a notebook and on a daily basis write down the kinds of things that they're doing that's going to contribute to their fitness and go from there. Certainly I show them how to lift weights, the proper way of lifting weights. I don't trust that they know how to do all these things. And same thing with stretches. We go through various types of stretches to show them the kinds of things that they can be doing with that. Then at the end of the 7 weeks, they end up doing the post-test, the same exact tests that they did for the pre-test. They look at the results, and then I ask them to write a reflection and essentially around did they meet their goals, why did they meet their goals, or maybe why not they didn't meet their goals, and what kind of changes they look to do for the future. So this is just an assignment for them. For us, since we're not in school, it's somewhat similar, I think. It's the real world when it comes down to what can we do to get fit. So I'm going to talk a little bit about each one of these. So cardiorespiratory endurance is essentially a large muscle, prolonged. You have to do it for 20 minutes to 60 minutes. You can break up that into 10-minute segments. The intensity of the exercise is based on your heart rate. So there's some formulas you can go through, but I'll just give you kind of a ballpark saying for people our age, essentially you want to get your heart rate up to about 115 to 120 beats and maintain that again for 20 to 60 minutes based on your goals when it comes to some of these kinds of things. And you can do any kinds of activities. If you can walk fast enough to get your heart rate up like that, that's good. Obviously, some people still run, bicycling, stationary bikes, bicycling outside, dancing, whatever. I always say your heart doesn't really know what you're doing. So those would be the kinds of activities that you do. In terms of how often you do those, you need to do them 3 to 5 times a week. And if you can spread it out, that's good. If you can vary activities, that's good because sometimes injuries occur. If you are a runner, let's say, and you run 3, 4, 5 times a week, you could get shin splints or you could get joint pains, and that would keep you from doing it. So if you can vary your activities, cross train, those are certainly good things to do. So what are the benefits of cardio? Well, the first thing that you're going to talk about is it's really obviously going to improve your heart. So it's going to strengthen up your heart. Ways that you can measure that is it's going to reduce your resting heart rate. Most people have a resting heart rate somewhere in the 70s, but if you can get that down in the 60s, that would be good. And some people, marathon runners, not even have resting heart rates in the 40s and some even in the 30s. So when your heart beats that less often, that means it's beating much more efficiently. So every time your heart beats, you're ejecting more blood, and that's called stroke volume, and that's a good thing to do. So that's one of the ways that you can see that you are improving with your cardio. Certainly, you can kind of monitor your breathing rates and those kinds of things. If you're going faster than you did a couple of weeks ago, that you're getting more blood to your muscles are much more effective and go from there. One of the things that happens with cardio is it improves your cholesterol levels. So your HDL, your so-called good cholesterol, improves. That wipes away more plaque buildup. And your LDL, your bad cholesterol, is reduced. So that will help reduce your blood pressure. Your breathing rate, the respiratory rate will be better. So all kinds of benefits with cardio. And a lot of people realize that because the number one cause of death is cardiovascular diseases, all of them, but heart disease by itself. And it will decrease the risk of heart disease. For muscular endurance and muscular strength, now we're talking about weight training or resistance training or however, what kind of term you want to use. There's lots of ways of doing resistance training. You can use equipment, certainly, barbells, dumbbells. I know in the COVID era here, a lot of the weight rooms were closed down. They were where I work out. The school wouldn't let me work out anymore. So I have some dumbbells at home and on my deck and, barbells, but you can do a lot of body weight exercises too. Certainly the old-fashioned push-up, sit-ups, you can do lat pulls. And one of the things that I think people underestimate the value of is something called isometric exercises. So isometric exercises are where the muscles are contracting, but they're not moving. So something like a wall sit, which would be comparable to doing squats or lunges you could do. You can press one hand against the other like this, and this is a good chest tricep exercise. Or you can press one hand against the other right here, and we got bicep versus triceps. So the thing about isometric exercises is that you're under tension for long periods of time. If you can hold those for 30, 40 seconds, that's maximum tension. Now you got to make sure you're breathing while you're doing this, otherwise your blood pressure will go through the roof. But that's maximum tension for longer periods of time than if you do what we would call maybe a concentric, where the muscle contracts, or eccentric, where the muscle lengthens. So that would be what we would call an isotonic exercise. Those are dynamic, they're good, that's what most of us do. But if you don't have equipment, don't be afraid to do those isometric exercises. You can get some tremendous good. The other part of doing that isotonic exercise is emphasizing the eccentric. So you can get a lighter weight and focus on, I'm just kind of doing this at an angle, but you can focus on lowering the weight. So we're 20 to 40% stronger lowering the weight. The muscle's contracting as it gets longer, and that actually causes micro tears. Believe it or not, that's our goal when we do resistance training, is to micro tear our muscles. and then we eat some good protein, and our human growth hormones kick in. We don't have as many as we used to. Our testosterone levels aren't as high, but still we have them, and that's how you increase the size of your muscles, which is called hypertrophy. Now, at our age, it's pretty hard to increase the size anymore. You still can, depending on who you are. But one of the things that we have to fight is something called sarcopenia, sarcopenia. So sarcopenia is muscle wasting, if you will. Our muscles start to lose size, and that's called atrophy, somewhere around the age of upper 30s. So even for some people, middle 30s. So you start to shrink your muscle about a half a pound a year. Now the effect of that is on your fat loss or fat gain because of that. So muscle and fat are two separate things. Your fat doesn't turn into muscle, your muscle doesn't turn into fat. But if your muscle shrinks, there's a pretty good chance that your fat then is going to get bigger. And again, that's called hypertrophy also of your fat cells. So that's typically what happens to people because muscle is your major calorie burner. We burn most of our energy at rest, and the more muscle you have, the more energy you're using. And anytime we try to balance energy in versus energy out to keep a neutral effect, the more muscle you have, the better. Certainly, muscle is going to help you over time too. I always tell people it's the best anti-aging activity that you can do when you think about in your 50s, 60s, 70s, and the kinds of things that you want to do later in life physically, you're still able to do. And hopefully you can prevent from falling and having some of those disability joint problems that people tend to have in their upper ages. Stretching would be the next activity, flexibility. So flexibility by definition is just your range of motion at a joint. So that just tells you that every joint you have, you need to stretch. So all the major muscles that you lift, and we need to balance both front and back, particularly back exercise as we age because we get kyphosis, we need to do the same thing with stretching. So static stretching, dynamic stretching, another one called proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation, that's a little bit involved. But static stretching is basically where we hold a fixed position for 10 to 30 seconds, and you can repeat that as many times as you want. 2 to 3 times usually is a pretty good goal. The goal with flexibility is to allow us freedom of movement and hopefully prevent back pain because 85% of us are going to get low back pain. I know I get it from golf a lot, and I have to constantly work on stretching to keep my pain under minimum levels if I can, and my abilities at higher levels, if you will. The last part again is this bioelectrical impedance analysis of body composition. So what we really want to know is what is our percentage of body fat? A lot of people focus maybe on a BMI, and body mass index is your weight in kilograms divided by your height in the square of meters. So it's just a height-weight ratio. But if you have muscle, then that's not going to mean a whole lot to you. So if you can find out your percentage of body fat, that's the most important. And so we know that obesity is really the second cause of all our deaths. Cigarette smoking would be number one. So the worst habit you could have is cigarette smoking, but obesity is number two. And when we think about high blood pressure and diabetes and cancers, those are all related to having too much body fat. So for females, having body fat over 33% is considered obese. For males, having body fat over 25% is considered obese. So it's always about calories in versus calories out. So you got to watch your diet. So diet itself, we're always focusing on how many calories we're taking in. So moderation and how much we eat certainly is something. And then obviously what we're eating. So fat per gram has 9 calories, carbohydrates and proteins have 4 calories per gram. So if we can keep our fat level income about 30%, our protein somewhere around 15 to 20%, and our carbs around 55 or 60%, somewhere in those ranges, depending on how active you are. So that's kind of it in a nutshell when we think about how to work out. Now it's up to you to figure out how do you do those kinds of things. To me, COVID affects the weight training the most because that's the hardest thing to do if you can't go to the gym. you can still always get outside, I think, and do your walking and running, and that's probably a good thing to do to get some fresh air. I know it's going to get colder as we go along here, but still, that's something that you can do outside, I would say, for the most part. And stretching, COVID shouldn't affect your ability to stretch at all, so you should be able to do those. So it's always about staying motivated, I think, when it comes to these. Last thing I want to talk about is some of these principles then to improve these. So the most overriding principle to improve any fitness aspect of fitness is overload. So overload means you got to do more than the norm. You have to do what's called a threshold of training. So when you talk about cardio, it's a minimum of a heart rate. If you talk about flexibility, you have to stretch to the point of discomfort. So we're always talking about overload. If you're trying to get strong, you're going to lift heavier weights that you're going to do maybe 5 or 6 repetitions. If you're trying to get muscular endurance, you're going to get lighter weights so that you can do 15 to 20 times. So we're always focusing on the overload. And then we have what we call progression. So progressive overload or progression means that your body gets used to the overload. So you have to constantly, and that's a good thing, you have to constantly monitor and decide when do I increase the intensity or the time that I do it. Now, you're always worried about balancing work versus rest. You don't want to exercise too much. You don't want to rest too much. So you're always balancing those two things. And a lot of times it's by feel. If you feel good, you can go ahead and exercise. But even if it's supposed to be the day that you're supposed to exercise, but you're feeling your joints are aching or you're not feeling so hot, you're better off resting and going with it. Individual differences just means that we're all different. We have different body builds. Our genetics are different. Some of us have more fast twitch versus slow twitch muscle fiber, which allows us to lift weights a little bit better than if you have slow twitch. Some of us have higher amounts of body fat naturally. Women have more body fat than men. So everybody is going to be different when it comes to these principles and the kinds of training. So you need to see what works best for you. Specificity means that you need to be specific in terms of the kind of activity that you're doing to improve the area of fitness that you want to improve. So you're not going to get more flexible unless you actually stretch. You're not going to improve your cardio unless you work your heart. Sounds very obvious, but some people think that, well, I don't need to stretch because I run, or I don't need to lift weights because I run and running makes my legs stronger. Not really. I mean, it does compared to doing absolutely nothing, but you need to be specific and pick out the activities that are going to work it the way that you want it to work it. And the last one would be reversibility. Obviously, meaning that if you don't train, you're not going to improve, and your improvements are going to be gradually lost. It doesn't mean that you can't take some time off, but the reality is this has to be something that you do every day of your life, pretty much. You're doing something that's going to contribute to your fitness, and that's the point I try to get across to my students is this isn't for 7 weeks, it isn't for a year, it isn't for your season, it isn't for college years, it's forever. And it's dynamic. You're constantly trying to figure out how does it best fit you, how does it best fit your lifestyle. But it certainly is important that on a daily basis, you're doing something that's going to contribute to your fitness. So I'm ready to answer questions that somebody might have.
Okay, Charlie, can you hear me?
I can.
This is Jen. So we do
Okay.
have a few questions. I will say, first of all, I would love to take your class.
Oh,
I
great.
need
Well,
I
come
need
on, come on up.
All right. I need a kickstart out of COVID here.
Yeah.
So Richard has a question, and he said, is there a formula to find the percentage of body fat that one has? And I kind of have a follow-on to that too. Like I remember there was our gym offered a place to measure your body fat, and now the gyms are closed. Like, is there a good way to find out?
Well, certainly this bioelectrical impedance analysis you can pick up at a lot of drugstores even have them, or Dick's or any of those kinds of things. They're not that expensive, actually, if you want to get them. Some people have scales. So you stand on a scale and it actually measures your body fat. Now, these, again, aren't the most accurate. They're, like I said, plus or minus 3 or 4%. So if it says you're 20% fat, maybe you're 16% fat, or maybe you're 24% fat. Another simple way to kind of monitor fat loss is measure your waist. Your waist essentially should be about half your height. So in my case, I'm 68 inches tall. That means I need to keep my waist under 34 inches. it's kind of a simple thing to do. You know, when we gain fat, we usually gain it around our abdomen the most. When we lose fat, we feel it there too. So that's a good way of just kind of monitoring what your body fat is. There are BMI charts. You could find those just about anywhere. And again, body mass index is your weight in kilograms divided by your height, and it'll come up with a number. If you're over 30, that means you're obese, according to your BMI, and 25 means you're overweight. So somebody like me, I'm 5'8", I weigh 185 pounds. My BMI is 27 something. That says I'm overweight, but I'm really not over fat. So BMIs are good for the general population, but for people that lift weights, it isn't as meaningful. But you can find those charts just about anywhere, probably online.
Okay, great. Thank you. I have another question from Sebastian Mitchell.
Okay.
He's over 50 and he's been doing more weight training and HIIT in his workouts rather than
Okay.
running for extended periods of time or miles. Is that a sound approach?
Sure. I mean, there's no right or wrong way of doing this. So the first thing you have to figure out, is this fun? Is it fun for you, Sebastian? You enjoy doing it? Is it working for you right now? So high intensity training is certainly a great way to train. If it doesn't, I can't do high intensity training really, because it would probably hurt my joints, or my back would hurt, my knee would hurt, whatever it would be. So you got to make sure it's right for you. You're not going to get injured. But the greater the intensity, usually the better. But that's the last thing that you would increase. You would increase your frequency a little bit more often. You'd exercise, generally speaking, and you would increase the time. But you're going to get the best results if you increase the intensity. So it'd be like if you were running. The faster you can run, the better results you're going to get, as long as you can run the same distance. So yes, that's a good approach, I think. And as I said, you can go on YouTube right now. Not that every person on YouTube is an expert, but you can find all kinds of different exercises. One of the things that you can find a lot now, I think, is how to exercise at home, and the kinds of exercises that you can do cardio wise. People are doing jumping jacks, burpees, running in place, going up and down steps. I mean, there's just a lot of things you can do. It's probably not as much fun as being on a treadmill or some things like that, but it's really up to the individual.
Okay, great. Thank you. And let me know if you all have any follow-on questions. Just type them in the chat box or the Q&A box. Um, we had another one. Do you have any reference materials of your own or that you recommend?
Oh, let's see here. Well, as I said, I think you can find a lot of good information about this almost everywhere and anywhere. Um, there are some textbooks. I mean, I use a textbook, but there's so many wellness books out there that, and all of them are essentially saying the same kinds of things. If you Googled, fitness workouts or something, you're going to find all kinds of information that can help you with it. We have a graduate that I have come and talk to our class. He has his own gym called Shulk Fit. So he puts out a lot of material, but you can almost every day on Facebook, it seems like I get about 10 different people offering different ways to work out. And so I think the information is pretty much everywhere. And unless it really sounds, over the top crazy, it's probably pretty good stuff.
Okay, great. So, I think in COVID, we find ourselves not in the same routine that we used to have. So, if we had to prioritize, and let's say it's hard to stack a workout, so it's kind of hard to do a cardio, then weights later, then stretch. Can we do cardio one day, weights the next, stretch the next?
Sure, absolutely.
And
As
what's
a
the
matter of fact, that's probably what you should do. So, cardio should be done 3 to 5 times a week. Weight training, if you do weight training the correct way, as I mentioned, you're actually micro tearing muscle fiber. So you got to wait 48 hours to 96 hours to let that heal. Now, you can do upper body one day and lower body the next. But essentially, if you're doing chest exercises, then you don't want to do them for another 2 days. So you could do cardio on the same days that you do weight training, or you could do them different days. Stretching, you could basically do stretching every day if you wanted to. If you're going to stretch, the best time to do static stretching anyway is after you're done exercising. So after lifting or after doing cardio, you should do the static exercises then. Your muscles are 20 to 40% more flexible when they're warm. So that's the best time to do stretching. Now, there is dynamic stretching where you're kind of slowly moving your joints through a range of motion. That's what many sport teams do now as pre-contest or pre-practice activities. That can be done ahead of time. It's kind of part of your warm-up. But really, if you're going to do stretching, it should be after. So, depending on your weekend, sometimes people say take the weekend off and don't do anything, but you can set your schedule any way that works for you. And that's what I try to tell people is this should be scheduled almost like you would schedule your work hours or your babysitting hours or I got to work with, or I got to cook or I got to go shopping or whatever it is. You got to figure out how you're going to put it in your day. I know for me, I do my cardio, and my cardio is fast walking, but anytime that I got 20 minutes or something like that between classes, you might see me, trying to get outside and do that quickly, or go downstairs in the gym or go in the weight room. So you can get a lot done in a short period of time if it's important to you.
Okay, great. Just a comment from Richard. He said he has some back exercises that he came across in the 1990s that have worked for him, and he can scan a copy after our meeting and send it around. So that's wonderful. Richard, if you send that to me, I can make sure it gets sent to all the attendees.
The one thing I want to just caution about back exercises is if you have a bad back and sometimes you start, doing exercise, it can make it worse. So it's one of those things where you shouldn't do back exercises early in the morning in particular. Make sure you're good and warmed up before you do them, because you want to make sure that they're going to help you and not hurt you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anybody else have some questions or stories they want to share? Just want to look through here and make sure I didn't miss anything. So, and I know, Charlie, I know kind of weights, things like that have been hard to find during COVID. I mean, I know I tried to buy a few, you couldn't always get any. I mean, any other ideas for staying fit at home if you don't have access to kind of a weight bench and that kind of thing?
Yeah, well, a weight bench is, obviously you can lay on the floor somehow or another, or you can use chairs if you're going to do some kind of shoulder exercise that you might have sat on a bench before. But yeah, they're hard to find. I know same thing. I had to buy a weight bench, and I had to actually meet some guy in Naperville that was selling me his weight bench in a parking lot. So wasn't sure if I was going to get held up or I was actually buying something. But I think that's lessened up a little bit now. I think some of the fitness clubs now, fitness stores that sell weights and benches and that, I think they have a little bit more stock now than when in March and April, when everybody, had the same situation that everybody was inside. You just got to make do with whatever you can make do with. That's why I mentioned these isometric exercises. So if you go to a door jamb and you're just pressing up against the door jamb as hard as you can, that's a substitute for a shoulder press. Or if I have some cans, I can do all kinds of different exercises. So the same kind of exercises that you can do with smaller weights, maybe you can find even big soup cans or cans of beans or anything like that. They can weigh up to like 3-4 pounds. So I think, you just have to do more repetitions with things like that. But that's the hard part. You're going to have to use your creativity and your imagination when it comes to some of these things.
Right. Okay. I'm just looking through for a few more questions, if anybody has any. Okay, I'm not seeing many more questions, so I will just thank you all for participating and taking time out of your busy week to join us. And I hope you've enjoyed today's session. I also want to remind everyone, homecoming at home. We're not having our homecoming on campus, so we're calling it homecoming at home. And those events will take place the week of October 5th through 10th. And just related to fitness, we're hosting a virtual 5K that you can do at your leisure. You can do it on a treadmill. You can do it around the block. You can run. You can walk. Just wear your Monmouth gear, post it on social, let us know about it. There's a downloadable race bib that you can make and put your class year on it if you'd like to. So we encourage you all to do that. There's also a scotch tasting, coffee chats in a Zoom room with your favorite professors. There's a discussion on diversity and inclusion, and a best of game day presentation with Coach Braun, so the football coach. So you can find information on all these events and on our website. And we also have a link to buy your very own Homecoming at Home t-shirt. And with a $50 donation to the Monmouth Fund, you have a chance to receive a fun box full of Monmouth College swag. So as a reminder, as you leave the webinar, you will be invited to a short survey. We do hope that you'll take just a moment to give us your feedback, but even more importantly, that you share your suggestions for future topics. The webinar was recorded today, and then it will be on our website for you to go back and review any topics that you'd like to review. And many thanks to Charlie for your generous
Thank
time.
you. I thank everybody for coming. It's heavy duty work for noon on a Tuesday. I didn't think there would be very many people that'd be interested. So thanks for taking time out of your day. I just wanted to say one other thing too. I did a podcast. So if you're ever interested in hearing that, if you Google my name and then Alive and Well, that was the company that did it. So I did a podcast that's somewhat similar to this too. If you're really bored and you want to listen to something for an hour, you can go with that. So, but I do appreciate it. It's quite an honor. Thank you.
Well, that's very good. I will look that up, Alive and Well. And thank you again for your time. Thanks everyone for coming together, and have a wonderful week. And don't forget to take care of yourself. Stay well.
Very well. Thanks.
Thank you.